Yeah, well, I'm back with another video, and again, sorry, I'm not looking at the camera exactly, because, well, phone, sideways, you get the idea. But anyways, this video, I'm going to talk about when you have that project car, and when potentially you should say enough is enough, and either sell it, or just stop working on it, like, to the point, like, if it's on the road, for example, and if it's just costing you too much money, whatever else. But anyways, yeah, so the first thing is, when you're considering any project, is what's going to be your budget, and what are you okay with overspending on that budget too? Because with any project car, you're going to have your budget, and then you're going to have a hard limit after that too. And that's just because your initial budget is probably not going to be accurate to what you're actually going to have to spend. And so, for example, like with my car, I initially thought it was going to take about $500 and basically about 2-3 months, maybe. Well, no. My car took, and it's still going actually, but I mean, to actually get it on the road, right? It took $2,500 and almost a year. It took 11 months. So, or just under 11 months actually. And so, yeah, that's when you gotta figure out, like, okay, was I comfortable with spending that? Yeah, actually. There was a few times, and if any of you have followed from the beginning of this, that I actually did sort of abandon my car a few times due to money, because I don't have the money. I really don't, right? And I was just like frustrated with stuff, and every time I came back with something, I was just like, oh, come on, you gotta be kidding me, right? And just like on and on and on and on and on. But now, because when you get done though, that's when it's just amazing and you feel fantastic. So yeah, you always want to set like two sort of budgets for yourself, like a hard limit to where you absolutely stop. And for me, on this thing, including the purchase price for me on this, now yours doesn't have to include that, but I always like to, because it's still total investment, is about $3,500, $4,000 max. Which I think is doable. Like, the parts that I'm going to be getting, I will need to find an appropriate carburetor for my setup, a cam. I do want an aluminum rad as well. And to swap out the rear end for an 8.8 with like a 323, 327, or even a 308 gear. That's a limited slip. So, I've been pricing stuff out and what I think it should cost, and actually researching as well on some other stuff. Like, because the 8.8, it depends who you ask. Some people will ask, like $400 for an 8.8. Others will only ask like $100. It just really depends on who you talk to. And, I'm budgeting out about $200 for that. About max, maybe $250 is as far as I'll go. And, there is other things that I want to do to this thing, and basically all the rest of the stuff I'm gonna spend is gonna be at least another $1,000 by the time I'm done. That also includes some of the body work, the paint as well, and all the upgrades that I've mentioned multiple times on the channel. And yeah, so, and as well, like, when you abandon a vehicle, and like, this doesn't necessarily have to be a project for this, but I mean, the main thing on my channel is project cars, right? So yeah, anyways, and like, when you finally get your car on the road, and and especially one that's been sitting or whatever else like that, there are stuff that'll go over time, and that's just because, or might just happen very quickly actually for stuff, and that's just because it's been sitting and seals are done and whatever else too. So there's that. And when you're doing like the maintenance sort of stuff on your car, like for example, my car needed a water pump after I overheated the engine due to a coolant leak, and so the water pump went, and like it was on its last legs at that point. I didn't know that at the time, but I mean, clearly if it did overheat and then the water pump went, you know, it was weeping out of the hole. So I got that replaced, not a big deal. I installed it myself, no big deal on that. Yeah, but little things like that, you know, $50 here, $20 there, $40 there, etc., 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 you know, it really does add up. But also, never ever tally because the thing is, as soon as you do this, you will go over budget fast. If you tally like some of your basic maintenance stuff, such as, you know, oil change or coolant, stuff like that, then that's where your budget will just go sky high. Because if you do that, because that's just regular stuff, for like if you add in, you know, what are you actually spending in gas? Well, I mean, that's another topic too. I mean, I'll touch on that, but as well, like if you add in your fuel cost into your overall budget, well, that's not exactly going to work out in your favor. And yeah, it's just one of those things that, you know, it's just something I don't do, you know. I just tabulate fuel economy and go from there. So, yeah, and, you know, right now gas is pretty cheap in most areas. I mean, it's going up here. It's kind of annoying, actually, but it's okay. I filled up in Red Deer on Tuesday, so that's fine. You know, and I mean, my car actually is getting really nice economy right now. It was getting really, really crap for a while, and that's also something you'll come across too when you first get your car back on the road. Like if your car's been sitting or whatever else like that, and you first get it out on the road. Well, especially if it's an old carbureted vehicle, chances are you're gonna get garbage fuel economy for the first few fill-ups. And that's pretty normal because there's going to be like a bunch of carbon deposits, whatever else in there. And especially if your carb wasn't tuned correctly and it's running rich, for example. And, you know, which just causes a bunch of carbon buildup, and it's just not what is actually good for your engine down the road. Yeah, you'll make more power off of it, but it's not, for reliability's sake and as well as a fuel economy's sake. No, you don't want your car running really rich. So yeah. And the next thing though too is, okay, something that you can add into your overall budget to a degree is, what is it actually costing you in gas over, say, per month on average? And you know, you have to own your car for a few months to figure this out, because you might not drive it as much one month, and then another month it's your daily, and then the next month it's parked. You know, you get what I mean, right? But like your average, and to be honest, it's better if you do it like over a year and tally it all up that way. Now, I haven't really been paying that close of attention because I've only put, I think, 4 tanks of gas in this thing so far. And because of the, again, it sat for at least 10 years, so, and the carburetor was running way too rich. You can see some of my other videos of just how much soot was coming out of the exhaust due to, again, the carburetor being too rich. And, you know, you can fix that pretty easily. Most carburetors will have a mixture screw as well as an idle screw, and you want your idle set, and you always want to do this while you're in gear, not when you're in park, if you have an automatic. You know, a manual, you still want, I mean, I'm trying to remember, actually, just brain's not functioning as it normally does, if a manual changes RPM if you're in neutral or not, and I don't think it does, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, so this will pertain to an automatic for sure, is always have it in gear when you're tuning the carburetor and tuning the idle, because when you start a car in park and then you go into drive, or 1 or 2, whatever you have, right, it's not going to like, it'll drop in RPM. So, and basically my rule of thumb is In drive, I want it around 800 RPM, which gives you a great idle as well as better fuel economy that way, because when you're on the highway, you know, it's reducing your RPMs that way. Because, you know, and like in park, it's around 1,000 RPM. Like it drops about 200-ish, because this thing does bounce around, and the gauge doesn't actually tell me. It just goes every 1,000 RPM, so that doesn't really help me. But with trying to get it exact, but you know, I know the rough range, so you can deduce from that, right? And so, yeah. And basically that's just kind of the short list of stuff, though, with a project. And like as well, and if it's just reliable enough for you, because there are a lot of old cars, and especially if you drive them hard, that they may not be the most reliable. But then again, that's also just about every car, right? And also if you don't take care of it, and if you don't put the right stuff in it, etc., 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 you know, it goes on and on and on about reliability that way. Because some of the most unreliable cars on the planet, you can actually make more reliable by keeping up on the maintenance and not beating on it. And I don't beat on Stitch. Like, yeah, do I do some hard pulls every now and then? Absolutely. But it is a Mustang after all, right? So you have fun with it. But I don't do that every day at every stoplight and every time I'm stopped. You know, I don't mash on the gas every time I launch. You know, I'm gradual on it, and that not only will increase the longevity of your engine, but also give you better fuel economy as well. And so, like, yeah, I mean, in dailying an old car, you gotta take everything into consideration, because, and sometimes depending on the car, parts might not be readily available. You might not be able to go to your local auto parts store and get stuff for your car, right? For the most part, you're okay, but there are some oddities out there that you're gonna have a bitch of a time trying to find parts. So yeah, there is that. And even like when I didn't know, when I first got this thing, I figured, okay, I can just get parts at Napa. And I mean, for the most part, I can, but not everything. And I thought Canadian Tire as well. Canadian Tire has absolutely nothing for my car. Like, the only things that they had, I think, when I went there was like one wheel bearing, and I think I can get shocks. That's about it. And it was just like, really? That's it? So, okay, fine. Just have to pay a little more, or go to websites such as Rock Auto to, you know, and I've done a few orders off Rock Auto. I think I've done 3 or 4. And other than one little mishap, everything's been good with them so far. So, because they had the incorrect listing, and I tried to call them out on it, but they wouldn't listen to me. So whatever. Because I measured my brakes wrong. But they shouldn't have had this option under the Mustang anyways, because the Mustang never came with 10-inch drums for the Fox body, or at least in my year. You couldn't get 10-inch drums. The 10-inch drums only existed on the Fairmont wagons, which, go find a Fairmont wagon, right? They are very, very rare. And the one guy I found with one, because I was like, hey, do you need drums? He's like, no, I actually did a rear disc conversion on my car. So that's pretty common, actually, on those, apparently, because you can't just get drums everywhere. So there's that. You know, and I'm out $60 on those drums, and there's nothing I can do about it. But, you know, with stuff like that, though, is if you're handy and you have the tools and the knowledge, you can actually recoup some money by repurposing it into something else. You know, my idea is, because I have the old drums off this thing, plus I have those 10-inch drums that are brand new, that I want to make them into stools and sell the set for, say, $100 to $150. That way I recoup some cash. I won't make a lot off of it, but I'll make between $20 to $60, or maybe a little more. But regardless, you know, I won't make a lot of money on that. It also depends on the materials you use and stuff like that. But yeah, so yeah, that is another thing too. And also, if you feel like you're getting out of budget on a vehicle as well, you can do what I did as well and pick up a parts car. If you can buy it right, and you might need a couple of parts too, so it's perfect. Like, I got, well, you can see the red seats. I'm taking the blower motor out. I'm taking the exhaust out of it, actually. Even though it's a V6, it's an inline 6, I can make it work. And the door latch on this door is screwed, so I need to do that. I also took the rear defrost, there we go, switch out of the parts car, because it wasn't working in here. But what's strange though is it worked when I put it into that car. I don't understand why, but it's a thing. And yeah, because I mean, by the time I'm done with that parts car, I might double my money, right? And so, and you can subtract that from the overall spend on what your project car is, right? So I bought the car, like, I'll tell you right now, I bought the car for $350. Don't have a ton into that. I'm just about to break even on it. I'll either break even in a couple of weeks or just by selling small stuff and start to be actually in profit in a couple of weeks, because I did sell a couple other small things off the car. And and I'm, yeah, and also I forgot to mention, I do want to take the seat mounts out of that thing for the driver's side, just for the front area, because this one, because yeah, for those that were following early on, which there's no video documentation of that, and there's a good reason for that, because it's not pretty. Because when I bought this thing, the seat mount snapped, and it was snapped actually when I bought it. So on the front left side of the driver's seat, and it's not uncommon for these to actually break like that. It's pretty common, but I had kind of limited time, so, and as well as I didn't have a grinder at the time, and it just also, when I borrowed a welder, it didn't work how I would have liked, so there was issues there. But yeah, anyways, because I borrowed a welder off of my dad's friend, and it worked decent. It was a little power fist flux core, nothing special there, right? And didn't have a lot of control. Like, it's good for stuff outside and whatever else, and if it doesn't need to be like super strong. But yeah, for what I needed it a lot more, because actually what happened was, when I was dropping it off to get some work done on the car, my dad was driving it and I was driving his truck, and as soon as he parked it, the seat mount snapped. So on him, and just like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. And this was only a few days before the out of province, so I had to fix that, and I did. And the only way I knew how to do it without a functional grinder at the time. And on these, there is a counterweight that's on the underside of the mount. That's actually, I think it's welded to the bottom of the mount, and then the stud pokes up, and that's what you put your seat rails on, right? The the holes in the seat rails. But because, yeah, again, I didn't have a functional grinder at the time, so, and I still don't. It crapped out on me before I could even use it to try and fix this properly. I just decided to weld the counterweight on top, which the first time that didn't work and it snapped. The second time, though, it actually is holding very well. And I used a different welder. I got a Mastercraft welder around Christmas time. Smoke and deal on it, so it came with a bunch of stuff, an auto darkening mask and all this other stuff for like $300. It's like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go for that. I had my dad pay $100 of it. That was pretty cool. So yeah, and it works just fine. It's just really ugly, right? So I'm gonna take it out of that car, and then when I'm ready to, like, whenever I get my grinder replaced, that, you know, I'll grind this out. I'll just drill it out of that car because I don't care. The floor is already rusty anyway, so what's a couple extra holes? And yeah, go from there. Yeah, so anyways, it's starting to get cold in here, and I think I've ran out of things to say, so, yeah, if you have anything to add to this video, you know, leave it down in the comments. And as well, you know, whatever you're working on, you know, show it off. Because I love to see your guys' projects, and I love, you know, I do follow a couple other people's YouTube channels on here as well that have commented, so, you know, yeah, I always like to see what people are working on, and especially, like, if it's different. That's what really gets me, right? I love that stuff. But anyways, I hope you're staying safe during our current climate of COVID-19. And as always, if you have that project, go wrench on it. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!